Hi and welcome everybody. We're just going to give another minute or two for a few more attendees to show up, and then we'll get started. Okay, great. I think we're ready to get started. Thank you for joining our Los Angeles Marketo user group event, Marketo Pro Tips to help take your marketing ops to the next level. On behalf of myself, Kim Bodemar, your Marketo LA leader, and Daryl Alfonso, your LA Marketo user group co-leader, we'd like to welcome everyone for attending, and thank you, Daryl, for all your help organizing this great event. Today, we're really lucky to have with us two experts in their fields who've outlined some tips and tricks, hoping you'll all find some very useful takeaways. First, we'll hear from Melissa McCready, who's not only a Marketo Power user, but also a contributor in the Marketo community and recent speaker at Marketo Nation Summit. Melissa is the Senior Director of Business Intelligence at Cylance and brings over 16 years CRM and marketing automation experience to our conversation today. And we're so grateful to have her participating in today's webinar. Our next speaker, Prash Shenoy, has over 20 years marketing technology experience and has expert knowledge in account-driven solutions, which he's implemented for dozens of companies. Prash currently builds out ABM strategies for enterprise Show Me Leads clients, and we're so proud to be getting a bit of his brain and knowledge today for our webinar. Please feel free to ask any questions throughout the webinar. We may address some as we go along, but we'll definitely share during our Q&A session at the end. So we're excited to jump right in, and we'll start with Melissa. And so we'll switch over to her for her slides.
Thank you, Kim. Excited to have everybody here today. Thank you for the opportunity to share things that I've learned along the way with everybody here. And if you'd like a copy of the presentation, we're going to make that available. So with that, I'll go ahead and get us started here. Okay, so we're going to talk through a scenario about using best practices where you would be preparing to send leads over to the sales team for them to do a pre-event call out. So we'll talk through that scenario and how these different pieces are really critical to make sure that you're optimizing what you're doing. So we'll talk about setting up Marketo programs and some things to do with their list builds, what you need to do on the Salesforce side to make it very easy for them, and then the most important piece that everybody gets asked for is, well, how did that go? So we'll talk through some things in regards to emailing, some best practices around that, a little bit further than just, hey, your subject line should have RE in it. It will be more best practices. And within this presentation, I've also embedded links. So there'll be where you can go to watch video, here's some stuff on best practices so that you guys can utilize this, post this webinar, and have some good stuff to go away with. So with that, let's go ahead and talk about getting started and the difference between smart campaigns and programs, excuse me. And what's really important here is to know the difference of these things and what you get to do with them. So you'll see at the bottom here, there is a reference. So if you, once we get this presentation over to you, you can click in here and it's going to give you more detail. It will point you into the Marketo community, and there are also links in here. So the events, the drip nurturing, the classic mail blast. So when we talk about the different types of programs, it's important to know what you can get out of each of these programs. So we've got the event program, the engagement program, email default, and then there's the smart campaign. And one thing I know that when I first started using Marketo, programs didn't exist. So I was really happy when they did. And reason being is because I could basically wrap everything into one when I do reporting. So that includes my smart campaigns and my lists and my landing pages and my emails and all that good stuff. And so there's huge advantage to using programs when it comes to reporting. And there are different pieces that come out of using an event program versus an engagement program versus an email program versus default. And then you've got the smart campaign, and there's limited things that you can get out of doing that. So really understanding what the difference is between each of those things is really critical so that you're making the best use of what you're doing. And so when we talk about, let's say we're going to do and prepare for an email that we're sending out to invite people to an event, we're probably going to be using most likely an event program, depending on if there's a webinar involved. But I will say that, you know, there's certain things you can and can't do in some of these programs where you're going to get a benefit. So if you're only sending an email out, it's really good to just use the email program because there's more metrics that you can see very quickly. And it also has more functionality for A/B testing than utilizing any sort of default program. And then the smart campaign, of course, you can send the email, but you're not going to get the same visuals that you'll get out of using the email program. So like I said, there's a little reference thing, so you'll have this to look through after the webinar. And I definitely encourage you to take a look and dive in there to learn a little bit more about those things if this is newer to you. And if not, you probably understand completely what I'm saying. Okay, so one of the things that happens is when you don't use naming conventions, you end up fumbling around and have a hard time finding things. So what I found as a best practice is using naming conventions and using a coding system for the different types of campaigns that you're doing. And so when we look at this, we say, here's the campaign type. So that campaign type has a code to it and maybe a little bit more about the campaign name. The details may be, let's say you're working with a partner, you would put the partner name in there. And then something along the effects of the number of records that you're going to send to. So if I'm going into Marketo and I'm looking for something, I can type in a date or I can type in my code, and then I get to see that right away and say, oh yeah, that send was big or it wasn't, instead of having to dive all the way through things. So I like to use this naming convention that you see here in the example with using the year first and then the month and then the date, because that also helps out well. And that year, month, and date, if you're sending an email, should be the actual event date. Versus using an email send date. If you're just doing an email, then code it with the date that you're sending the email. So using that consistent naming convention is also really good to do on the Salesforce side so that you have a match between the two. So what I'll do is I'll use the same name that I use in Marketo for the campaign that's set over in Salesforce. And one of the challenges can be that if somebody is going into that campaign, they may not know the code. So you may use another field, for example, to put that name in there so that at least you have that reference to go back and forth between the two systems. So the next piece is setting up the Marketo programs and using naming conventions and tagging, how critical that is. It's interesting right now what we're doing at Cylance is we're going back and we're expanding our use of tags so that we can look at things like primary audience, primary call to action. Geo, we have smart campaigns set up with triggers to be able to stamp geo information in, but even just using a global tag. So you'll see this tip for utilizing quick tagging mode. And I've also included in here, there's a nice little video about how to use the program's channel statuses and tags. It's really important to utilize those as much as you can, because I will tell you I do a lot of reporting and it just makes it so much easier. So when I have those tags in there and I go to pull reports and I want to say, oh, what was my primary call to action? Was it I wanted them to fill out a form, and if that form was to download a white paper, or was it to get a demo, to make sure I have those things in there to see how much of it I'm doing and just see the level of effectiveness on those pieces. So next up, list build considerations. So blacklisting and marketing suspend. There's a whole bunch of really great stuff on the Marketo community and about blacklist and marketing suspend setup. So if you've not run into a blacklist situation, first off, congratulations. Secondly, if you have run into blacklisting, you know that you've got to fill a form out with Marketo, and there's some steps that you have to take. And so I've included in here a link that you can go to that tells you exactly how to set this up for the blacklisting that Marketo would send you in the case that you've been blacklisted. And blacklisting mainly will happen because you're emailing to stuff that's old. Some things that you can do is you can use an email validation tool. There are plenty of them out there. So Experian, for example, has one. And what that will do is we'll ping the email to see if it is real, because blacklisting typically will happen when you have a lot of bounces, or, you know, something is, it's just not an active email. So you want to make sure that that's not happening, because, you know, blacklisting, if you're doing it too much, can get you shut down, and it's really difficult to get off those lists once you're on them, and takes a long time to do. So you never want to get yourself into that conundrum. Marketing suspend is another important thing. So the blacklist is the first piece of it. The second piece is marketing suspend. So again, I've created a little link here for you guys to utilize about what you need to do to set up marketing suspend programs. So for example, if you have sales teams that don't want to send to people in live opportunities, that you're shutting that down and you're suspending it. If you have somebody who is a new customer and there are some customer support things that are going on as a part of ramp up, that you suspend the outbound marketing to them and it stays into a stream that's more for kind of the customer success team to use. Those are some examples. So when we talk about, you know, going forward in the scenario, we want to make sure that we've got these things set up operationally so that we don't run into any of these issues, and we can just clear our minds and keep focused on making sure that we're getting the content and the copyright and all that fun stuff. So next up, make it visible. This is so critical. I cannot tell you how many times I hear, I can't find the leads, what's marketing doing, right? And this is really about aligning with your sales team. So when you align with your sales team, you're making sure that you're giving them data back that will allow you to make it visible, and that somebody would know what something was about. So for example, I'm just showing you kind of a page example here. And typically what I'll do on the Salesforce side, a really critical one, is a link to the leads in Salesforce. And I'll copy a list view and put it in there. So I can send a notification out of Salesforce. And what I do is I'll use a template. And that template will have the details from the campaign, and it will include that link. Now, I'll also do a link to contacts in there as well, if there are contacts that I know that are going to be in there. But typically, there's a process for calling the leads first before we're calling contacts. So providing that level of detail to the sales team so that they can easily say, I'm supposed to do this call to action, here's what this was about, and linking them over to the campaign if they want to. So a sales-specific page is really important on the Salesforce side so that you can put a lot more detail in for your marketing planning, but stuff that really is relevant to sales instead. for what the sales team is going to see and their permissions that you do that within Salesforce. Next up, member statuses. This is a critical one. I cannot tell you how many times I see different statuses being used, and when you're consistent with it, boy, does that reporting change. So typically what I have done, and you'll see here this matrix, and this matrix is in an Excel spreadsheet that I use, so I've just given you guys a screenshot of this. But ultimately these have filters on them, and I can go through it and say, hey, if it's advertisement, what is the campaign member status that I should use for any advertisement campaign that I set up on the Salesforce side. So when we talk about an event, we look here and we can see that if it's a networking event or it's a seminar or a webinar, we have this thing that we use called Ask for Sales. And what's important about that is there's that time that somebody is going to an event and they're saying, I want to speak with sales, and maybe they get a business card or whatever the case is. So a lot of those times, you know, if we don't capture that, that really is an MQL. So we call Ask for Sales an MQL. And that lets us, you know, highlight it and prioritize it higher and all of that good stuff. And we have lead scoring that also talks to that Ask for Sales. So we set that up as far as setting up the campaign on the Salesforce side. We make sure that our Marketo campaign is set up to also update our member statuses. So if we're importing a list or something changes, that we have Marketo listening for that, and it's a consistent rule, so it makes it so much easier. So it takes the guesswork out of it. So really important that what I recommend doing is that on the Salesforce side, what you do is you set up templates for each of these different types of campaigns, and then you go into each of those, and there's an advanced setup where you set up your campaign member statuses, and you set those up within each of those. So if you set up an advertisement, you're putting a campaign member status in there of engaged, and that's your response. And if you put in an email, you're going to put in clicked, converted, deliver, so on and so forth, and then you're going to be updating those when you are setting up your email. And if you set that template up on the Marketo side and the Salesforce side, it takes so much work out of it, and you're going to get nice, clean reporting. So with that, you guys will, again, be able to take this and utilize it, and I recommend doing it. I get a lot of questions from people about this over the years, and I just find make it simple and make it consistent. So next up with Make It Visible is making it easy for sales. So we talked about the campaign piece of it, but now there's the handover side. And the handover side is about I am going to create list views, I am going to use dashboards, I am going to use reports, and we're specifically talking about Salesforce here, so I apologize if anybody is a Dynamics user or something else. But in the Salesforce side, utilizing the list views. So you want to utilize the list views, reports, and dashboards so that when you hand it over to sales, they can't say to you, I can't find my leads. And you want to use a Salesforce predefined email. That's what I was talking about earlier on the campaigns page, to send over to them when you've done something where they need to do a follow-up on there. So in the case that we're doing this event, we're going to send them, here's the list of the folks that you need to follow up with to talk to. And then also another thing is to provide a weekly status report. So what I like to utilize is something, you could even use Marketo to do this, but ultimately what it'll do will say, here are the emails that are going out for the week, here are the webinars we're holding, here's new content. So if there's a new white paper or battle cards for sales, you can send out, here's where you go to do that. And keeping it very fluid where they expect it, and they end up living and breathing by getting that to understand what's going on the marketing side. The other thing too is publishing a campaign calendar in Salesforce. What I like to do there is I'll actually automatically create an event from the campaign. Now we haven't done this at Cylance yet, but we will. And ultimately we use a workflow to set the event, and then we can publish that marketing calendar out to everybody so that it's very clear on what is going to be happening that impacts sales. And I can't stress this enough, but engaging with sales for feedback to define these items and to get feedback about what's working and not working are really, really critical. So when we talk about the list views, if you're not familiar with what they look like, here's an example. So this would be in Salesforce. The leads tab you see is highlighted up here, and the list view is MQLs to review for us in North America and all. And basically, I've got this set up where I put that date for MQL using a custom date and timestamp that I can set either using a Marketo token, or I can do this with a workflow in Salesforce. And I prefer to use both because sometimes you have a little delay with the sync between Marketo and Salesforce. So I make sure to do that just so I kind of have an insurance policy to say if we're having problems with anything syncing, we have something to look at for that. And then we utilize an MQL lead status so that if you see something that comes in as MQL, it's very, very visible. We do not change the lead status if it's something that the team is already working, and we send out alerts to our team that'll say, hey, this MQL, even though you're in the middle of trying to get in touch with them, so they've done something else, and we utilize Marketo Sales Insight for that, which I would definitely recommend if you're not using that. So next, aside from list views, we also have reports, and so we'll set up reports where this is one way to look at it, but there's many ways to set it up. We'll say, what are the member statuses? So what we do is we carry over the lead status, and we utilize lead status at both the lead and contact level. And when we do that, we use a formula field on campaign members so that we can go in by campaign and we can see the lead statuses or the contact statuses on the member side of things, so that we can easily report. And we also put those date stamps on there that are listed on the contact or the lead. We'll put other information about the account. We use Lean Data to do the automatic matching between the lead and the account, and you're able to pull all of that information in. So over here to the left, you'll see that there's links. And if you're not familiar with Salesforce, I highly encourage you to go into Trailhead. And you'll see here there's a button that says Start Learning for Free. It's really free, and you can go to town and just do whatever you want and play with it, and then nobody gets mad. So the links here are links that'll take you in about how to create a list view, things about dashboards and reports in Salesforce, and then dashboard and report types is another layer that people tend to get hung up on when they're learning the Salesforce side. All right, so just a quick recap. Make sure you utilize your list views, talk to sales, make it visible. So tracking performance is a really important thing to do, and unfortunately, there are some things that Marketo tracks really well, and there's things that it doesn't. And the things that it doesn't are those things that I will actually set up on the campaign page in Salesforce to quote-unquote project manage the campaign and keep a list of the audience, the send times, day of the week, the subject lines, all of that good stuff. I'll even use an Excel spreadsheet to do that. And so what I've included in here is my favorite thing of all time. Mailer has an email benchmark annual report that they put out. It will tell you everything under the sun about benchmarks by industry for open rates, click-through rates, best send times, all of that stuff. So definitely click on that after we pass this out to you. And I wanted to include this little thing here about the subject lines because there's some pretty interesting stats on here. And I think when you look at this, it's funny because you're like, RE, really? How does that work? So anyways, I just wanted to share that with you all. The other thing too is doing A/B testing is so critical. And so I've included a link to a video in here for you guys that will take you through the tips and tricks for email and landing page A/B testing. Very, very important. You don't want to go blast to a database of 100,000 people and not have done this. Otherwise, you're doing it blindly. So as much as you can do it with your A/B testing, do that and track what you're doing. Tracking is so important. And I do business intelligence for Cylance, and I will tell you that when people don't do things like this, it definitely takes the ability to report on it out of the mix completely, which is really not good. All right, so also another big thing to know with tracking performance are smart lists versus analytics. And I always think that, if you don't point this out, people don't necessarily understand inherently what the difference is between the two. So when you look at this, I put together this little table here about, when to use a smart list and when to use analytics and kind of what they can both do. And one will do better than the other. In the case for total number of sends, obviously there's more data you're going to get using analytics. But the real difference with smart lists is that you can export the people who are in that campaign or program, right? And that's why it's really important to utilize smart lists within your program to look at results, so that I will create a template and I'll set up, here's the list for the results, so I can make it very easy on myself to go back into that. So with that, reporting. So reporting is very critical, obviously, for a zillion different reasons. What I'm showing here is, this is what a dashboard can look like on the Salesforce side, but I've given you guys a list of really kind of key KPIs using Salesforce reports. So again, going back to that point of making it very visible. So net new leads, how do I do net new leads in Salesforce versus Marketo? How am I able to attribute that? And one thing that I have done is that the net new leads by campaign allows me to take a look at the lead created date versus the campaign member add date to then roll up. So there's a tool called Roll Up Helper, and Roll Up Helper will allow me to go and say, there's this many net new leads, there's this many MQLs in this campaign, and there are this many SQLs in this campaign, and there are this many leads by this geo in this campaign. And people find that incredibly helpful, looking back at that and then be able to report out on it. But I can't stress enough how whatever you're doing, if you can't report on it, then you need to go back to the beginning and figure out ways that you can measure and track things. Because with marketing, we're only as good as the data that we're able to provide back on our performance and showing that we have ROI. So what are the top takeaways here? Use your programs when you're sending a series of emails versus using a smart campaign. Consistent naming convention. Have insurance policies for your email sends and for data quality. So when we talked about the blacklist and we talk about the marketing suspend, there's a lot of other things you can do for data quality as well. Lead Space is an awesome tool for helping in append data in, and their accuracy rate is incredible. So in the past, I've seen append tools at around a 50 to 60% accuracy. Lead Space, their noting is 87% accuracy, and the data appends because they're using big data tools to pull that information down. Document, test, report, lather, rinse, repeat, do it every time you're doing something. Involve sales, where there's going to be a sales call to action so that you're handing it off and they know it's coming and they can give feedback. Leverage Salesforce for your visibility, and make everybody look really good by having those KPIs at your fingertips and setting them up on a Salesforce dashboard and having your analytics set on the Marketo side. So if anybody's asking, you can just go pop in and be able to give them the answer. And keep a performance deck up to date. So one of the things that I learned in my career is that you want to make sure that individually what you're doing is visible and that you can show people how things are set up. So what is your MQL process? What is your process for setting up emails? What do your templates look like for your programs, right? And if you document that, you're also, and you're looking at your KPIs, and you're documenting those KPIs week over week, now you've got a way to show this is how we do it, this is where we were, this is how we grew. And let me tell you how awesome that looks on a LinkedIn profile and a resume to say, oh yeah, we increased, our MQLs 30% in one quarter, and that you were responsible for doing that. So really, make sure what you're doing is visible as well. So I thank you guys very much, and I'm going to turn it over to Prash. Thank you guys, and we'll have this deck over to you guys afterwards.
Great, thank you so much, Melissa. These are really super relevant and actionable tips. I know I'm completely benefiting from, and hopefully everyone else can as well. And now we'd like to turn things over to Prash and take some of those helpful Marketo foundational and optimizational learnings and use them to guide us toward a successful account-based marketing plan. So Prash, we'll turn over to you now.
Thanks, Kim, and thanks, Melissa, for a lot of those helpful tips. I could relate almost to every one of them, and I think I've used a lot of them. Really useful for setting up a successful marketing automation, as well as getting the metrics out of both system, the CRM and the automation. I'm super excited to be here today. It's a wonderful session, and we are going to learn a little bit more today on ABM. I'm Prash, and I work as a Chief Strategy Officer at Show Me Leads, and also have been working as marketing technologist and helped a lot of customers and the clients on ABM, as well as mapping their technology to business process, both in demand gen and CRM. So this is a little bit about Show Me Leads. We are a services partner with Marketo, and we help the customers with Marketo customers with anything they need within Marketo platform. Either it might be customizing it, or getting them up and running, or trying to get the best ROI from the tool and the CRM system. So these are some of the cool things we work on, and always happy and excited to solve new problems. Today we'll look at the new buzzword which has been in the marketing world for last year or more, which is called account-based marketing, or ABM. So though it is a new term right now, but we have been using the tactics and the process for over a decade or more. But now under ABM, I think the term, a lot of the practices which both sales and marketing have been using have been brought under one umbrella, and also bringing the teams much closer. So yeah, ABM is not a new term, and it has been there forever. And as some people would have called it as named account selling, or account-based selling. But with account-based marketing, what phenomenal thing has happened is both marketing and sales teams are forced to be in one room. The phrase which says like sales from Venus and marketing from Mars doesn't run well with ABM. Both need to be on the same planet, not just same planet, on the same room to make this successful. So first is, as ABM says, it's all based off accounts. So the whole mindset of working on leads and a contact has to be slightly changed to think through on basis of accounts, which really matters most to each organization. Finally, all leads and contacts belong to account, and now we are focusing more about the accounts, and also the accounts which matters most to the sales and marketing, so that we can target the right accounts at the right time, and also get the best ROI from each of the marketing and sales effort. Historically, if you look at the marketing funnel, a marketing and sales funnel, you can relate to the funnel on the left side, which is typically on the top. We have the demand process, which we try to get as many leads into the top of the funnel, and then try to qualify them, engage them, and get them to interact with sales, and finally convert them to contact and accounts. We're just in ABM, we're trying to slightly flip the funnel. Instead of starting with a large base of contacts and leads, what we'll do is look at the accounts which matters most, which is like, what are the target accounts we want to get into the system, right? Or the sales and marketing wants to target, so that we know they are the good fit, and also we know they have propensity to buy our product. And based on that, we look at all the contacts within that account and try to engage them across multiple channels in more strategic and more laser focused process and tactics, which can result into much more meaningful conversation as well as engagement. And also people have seen the ROI from these engagements are much more higher than the regular demand gen tactics. So here are a few advantages of ABM. Usually we're seen as there's a huge ROI from the same efforts because it's much more focused, much more meaningful, and also much more engaging than the regular marketing efforts. And also it can drive the revenue attributed to these efforts have seen a significant increase, both in terms of the deal size as well as any of the upsell, cross-sell. Also, it's much more greater when it's targeted and more focused. And finally, it's the alignment of sales and marketing is critical. I can't stress more on this. The whole success of ABM is based on how closely sales and marketing can align their efforts. So with ABM, to really make ABM successful, there are three main categories you can need to look into. One is like targeting the right accounts, and also then engaging them in much more orchestrated and cross-channel campaigns, and also much more personalized campaigns so that the message and the content resonates with each one of them. And finally is how do we measure the success? If you don't know, if you are not ready with the metrics you want to see the impact, then it's much more difficult to see whether the campaigns and the effort has been successful. So it's much more critical right at the beginning to come up with ROI you want to expect from this, and what are your metrics so that you can have the whole process outlined so that it is measurable at each level. And the whole ABM starts with identifying the accounts. And I think from my experience with a lot of customers, I think this is the most critical and also the most time consuming process. The more thought and planning which goes into this can really yield much more better results at the end. So, and all this identifying accounts is not just a marketing effort. It needs to be hand in glove with the sales. There might be some the accounts which sales already have on their list and they want to target. And also marketing has some of their metrics to figure out how many of the top accounts are much more engageable or already have certain interest, which we can easily convert them. So identifying target accounts for the ABM is critical, and it's both marketing and sales working together, not only just adding the accounts to the list, but also trying to categorize them as maybe tier 1, tier 2, or also like top 20 accounts, which we want to have a conversion within this quarter or two. And once the accounts are identified, the next process or the critical step is to see how many contacts or leads we have our system, both the marketing automation as well as CRM, and see whether there is sufficient number of leads in these accounts. If not, then there needs to be a more process to acquire those leads either through marketing initiatives or through data append. And once that is done, now we need to engage them much more at a personal level. So trying to build the whole campaign and also the content based on the personas in each one of these companies. And then finally is how do we really select the different channels or also customize them so that we can get the maximum engagement within each one of the accounts so that the sales can really go ahead with the penetration within each account and get them to an opportunity and a deal. And finally, the results. I think Melissa had a lot of tips on how do we really get those results from campaign level. I think all the tips are useful even at ABM. It's just the matter in which the configuration as well as the naming convention you do, you can always get these results out of those campaigns. So identifying accounts, again, a little bit more, I can never stress more. It's critical step, which either can be based on your product fit or even sometimes the competitors list, right? Maybe you can see if some of the competitors are not innovating or they have sunsetted some products which you can actually fill in the gap. Or also there's some customers are not happy with certain products. It's a great value where you can really pitch in or have a messaging which resonates with them to get them on your side. And also looking at certain strategic initiative. So maybe the sales has an initiative to penetrate into northeast section of the country and you want to focus on the financials there. Yes, put it on the strategic list and target them. And always, I'm a big fan of using technology. And like Melissa also was saying, there's so many technologies today. And this is one of, it is a few technology which I always used and also works well with Marketo too and Salesforce, which can be used to really augment your data or also help in qualifying them or getting some critical data which can really help to understand each one of those accounts and the personas within those accounts. So for account data, you can use LinkedIn, Inside View, Hoovers, Dun & Bradstreet, and also like Discover or Gridforce. All of them are great tool if you want to append the data you don't have. And also like lead scoring we do traditionally for ABM, we need to think through the account scoring. So it is an extension to lead scoring where you roll up all your scores to account level so that you get much better idea about which account is much more engaging than looking at each individual within those accounts. And Leadspace, Lattice, Everstring, a lot of these good companies, good technology, which can really enhance the existing lead scoring within the marketing automation and take it to the next level where you can really get much more insight. And also some of the other niche solution which you can use to get much more insight for each accounts and contacts. These are certain some more additional data which we can use at the scoring level. Especially if you are just starting fresh and you want to really know which accounts to target. You can also use some AI, data, not only from the historic data of existing within our CRM or the other ERP system, also looking at the social media activity and signals, the social signals. There are tools like Leadspace which can do that. And find out which accounts really can have the propensity to buy your products or resonate with the product offering so that they can be targeted more efficiently. And also like the strategy to look at different categories. You can look either through vertical or sub-vertical or even like for Fortune 500. This exercise is critical, which really gives the focus as well as the structure for the whole campaign, as well as the efforts to be done within marketing as well as sales. And to really get more out of ABM, we need to know much more detail of each of the contacts. So we can also map them, the personas and the profiles within each account in much more detail than we would have done before. So each account, these are some example where you can use them, like their profile based on profile, add all the contacts, and which gives you a much better idea about what kind of roles and titles within each organization, and also whether they can be act as an influencer or they're the creative, they are the decision makers, so that when you're building campaigns and messaging, you can target in much more focused manner. So the number 3 is one of the most important when it comes to the campaigns. The real meat of the whole process is how do we really get the content, the right content to the right people or the contacts at the right time, right? So one of the initial readiness exercise would be is to map each content based on the personas as well as buying stage, which really helps in setting up the campaign and also the execution part. And next we'll look at the personalized campaign. So we can identify a lot of channels here. I think most of us use either some of them or all of them. And in ABM, one of the critical thing about channels is how having a strategy as well as systematic approach in which the channels can be used more efficiently to engage them. Maybe initially you might have a email blast, and after that, if they haven't opened the emails or haven't engaged, maybe a retargeting campaign for those who didn't engage would help. And followed by maybe certain social media retargeting or ads, or then followed by a telecall or a SDR process. So each one is, I think, much more customized solution for each company and also for each campaign, and see how best each channel line up with with each of the campaigns. So we want to get the maximum engagement and also the maximum visibility of the product and the message in front of these prospects. This is one of the flow. We can have a campaign flow. So having a much more personalized one, like for a decision maker, having a different campaign versus influencer. It makes it much more targeted, and also the messaging resonates. And also it's much easier to see which campaigns are doing better, and within each campaign, which stage or which type is giving, which channel is giving much more results. This is just one more slide information on how to map different tactics at different stages of the funnel. I think these are all traditional ones which all of us have used, but still it's still relevant to ABM. It's not taking away anything, but it's much more focused and also using it much strategically. And finally is measure and analyze. So there's few questions or things we need to have it in place before we start the program is how effective my programs are, right? So and also like what is the result we are expecting? Maybe we have 50 accounts in our ABM or the target accounts, and how much do we want to have the penetration within these accounts? What is the engagement, and how much is the what is the key success we want to look at the end of the process? And ABM is not like one-step process, it's a journey, and it needs to be done systematically and also given sufficient time for the success to happen. So it's both sales and marketing working together, and also looking at the ROI and the metrics from both sales and marketing. Sales might have more about how do we get more penetration into financial sector, and we want to close top 20 out of 50 accounts on the list. And for marketing is how do we really support that metrics by having the campaigns which are really engaging, and also how do we get more penetration or visibility into all those accounts. So it's a combination of both sales and marketing ROI combined as a ABM metrics, which can really show success across the whole organization. And also a little bit more details here, where you can break this the metrics also into different stages of the funnel, so that you can measure success at each stage, which gives much more insight into the next iterations of the ABM within the same company. Yeah, and thank you very much. And over to Kim.
Great. Thank you, Prash, for these key points for building a strong ABM infrastructure. And again, Melissa, for all your key Marketo tips and detailed knowledge share. It's been really great hearing from both of you. And we did have some questions come in, so now I'd like to open it up to a few of those questions that have come in. And first, directed to Melissa, I had a question come in from Christina, and it was, do you use RCE? And that's why tagging's so helpful for you, or another outside system that can pull in your tags?
Yes, so RCE definitely is the key tool to use where you're pulling in the Marketo tags. And another thing that you can do too, if you're using a BI tool like a Domo or a Tableau, you would be able to pull those as well. There's some really great information on the community about exporting and using APIs that I would definitely take a look at if you do have outside tools like that that can guide you through step by step on how to do that. And there's also a really great video that's on the community about using RCE, because I know it can be a bit cumbersome when you're first getting started with it.
Okay, great, thank you. And directed toward Prash, a few questions for each of you came in, so I'll kind of go back and forth so you can field them. Who decides on the ABM list, and how often can that change?
That's a great question. I think, as I always say, it's both marketing and sales. It's a collaboration between both the teams to come up with the ABM list. Usually accounts are owned by sales. They do have much more say in which accounts they want to target. But I think with a lot of these technologies and the analytics and insights, marketing can play a critical role in deciding or deciding the list, and also trying to help in dividing the list maybe as a tier 1, tier 2, and also like propensity to buy. Those kind of metrics can be provided to help to come up with the final list of target list or the ABM list for the whole organization. And the second part, how often do you change? That's really important. Usually the ABM is not a one-time tactic or one-time process. It needs to, both sales and marketing needs to give sufficient time to for the processes and the campaigns to work. So usually I would say at least give them 2 quarters till you change anything on a target list, unless you are certain that the company already has a long-term relation with a different competitor, and they're not going to buy any time soon. Maybe at that time you can take them off the list and keep them in nurture. But otherwise, it's best to keep at least for certain, at least 2-3 quarters, so that there is a sufficient time to nurture as well as engage them and see the results.
Great, thank you. And I should have mentioned that first question came from Christina, and that last one to Prash from Isabel. And I have another question from Anthony. And Melissa, this one's for you. And the question is, do you set up the SFDC campaign using Marketo, or should you do it first in Salesforce?
Great question. And I will tell you that you will benefit from setting up on the Salesforce side. As I had mentioned about using kind of a project management to collect things, for example, like what your list import date was, so you can track how long it's taking to do those sorts of things, right? So I think when you set it up on the Marketo side, it's great to do it that way, but then a lot of times you'll go, yeah, I'm probably not going to go over into Salesforce, and I see that happen more than not. So thanks for your question.
Okay, great. And kind of along those lines, I'm picking this one while we're on Salesforce. For Prash, Vidisha's wondering, can we use ABM SFDC accounts list in Marketo?
Yeah, definitely. I think Marketo ABM is a great tool, and I think it's one of the best I've seen, which can be easily implemented. And within Marketo ABM, you can either identify the accounts from the marketing database or from the Salesforce. So one of the best, I think one of the tip would be is to make sure that Salesforce accounts have a tag which says it's target account or certain list, so that when it is Marketo ABM can identify that and include that into the ABM list within Marketo ABM feature. Thank you.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. This one, again, is for Melissa and came from Richard asking, why would I document email programs separately versus using a report?
So again, great question. And it is because you cannot get all of the different pieces of data out of Marketo that you're going to want to look at. So for example, what was my subject line? If I haven't done something in Marketo, for example, and naming something where I have my subject line in the A/B test name, I'm not going to be able to see that. The other thing is putting in counts and having the ability to look at that as a whole and have a report that's going to show you all of that there. So I can look at every time that I'm using this sort of subject line or I have this call to action, having a whole list of those things at your fingertips makes it a lot easier. And there's, what you can do is just export your report, have an Excel file set up on the side, and then be able to go a little faster on that. Thank you.
Great, I think that's all we have time for. So I just want to thank everybody again for attending, and we'd love to see you at our future webinars and in-person user groups, and also stay tuned for upcoming special ABM event that's for going beyond the foundation. And if you've joined us through a social post or a friend or other method, but want to be sure to be on our future invites, then feel free to reach out to me. My email is here and will be on the slide deck, and I'll be sure to add you. Again, I want to thank Melissa and Prash and Daryl for all your help and for presenting and helping sponsor today. And also just want to wish everybody happy marketing and a great day ahead. Thank you.